Hey Star Warriors, Stargeek here. Let's talk about Marvel. No, not the new series. I'm talking about the original Star Wars Marvel comic books that spanned from 1977 to 1986. When Star Wars was under production in 1976, no one thought it would be a success. Even the film's director, George Lucas, had little faith in his biggest project. One of the few places he thought Star Wars could make its money back was in merchandising. Selling action figures, books, mugs, and t-shirts could make the project all worth it. Star Wars marketing director Charles Lippincott was able to snag a deal with Marvel Comics to produce a short 6-run comic adaptation of the film. Like Kenner Products, Marvel didn't expect much profit from the Star Wars brand, but thought it would be a fresh experience to produce fun, space-style products. Once the film became an unexpected success, Marvel knew that they had hit a jackpot, even single-handedly saving the company from financial drought. Over the next 9 years, they made a long run of comics until they canceled the series in 1986. From small telepathic bunnies to giant green carnivorous rabbits, there's a lot to discuss. And not just bunnies and rabbits and things like that. I'll talk about the plot summary, mistakes, continuity errors, best quote, best panel, and end each issue by rating it on a scale of 1 to 10. Today, I want to focus solely on the first 3 issues, covering half of the film adaptation. Without further ado, let's make the jump back to 1977 and take a look at Marvel's Star Wars, starting with issue number 1. I'm assuming that you, the viewer, have seen the Star Wars films, so I'm gonna skim over the plot summary a bit here. The story starts with the opening crawl. C-3PO and R2-D2 escape to Tatooine, while Leia must confront Darth Vader. The droids are captured by Jawas and sold to farm boy Luke Skywalker. When R2 escapes, Luke and 3PO have to chase after him, ending with Luke being attacked by Tusken Raiders. Overall, this is a fun way to look at the story, with new art and slight story variations. The biggest of these variations being the deleted scenes. When writer Roy Thomas got the script for the film, all of the deleted scenes were still left in. They were implemented into the comics, and it was too late to remove them by the time the change had been made. Because of this, our first introduction to Luke Skywalker is him looking up at the bright Tatooine sky, seeing a shining glimmer of light. Realizing that this is a space battle, he heads to Anchorhead to tell his friends about it. When he gets there, he's surprised running into his best friend, Biggs Darklighter, who recently joined the Imperial Academy. Luke's friends write off his imaginative stories as delusion, but Biggs tries to stick by his side. They have a short moment together before Biggs leaves this life behind. These have always been some of my favorite scenes, and it's great to see them recorded in the comics. The artwork for these issues is very strange. Illustrated by Howard Chaykin, the characters and vehicles all look very stylized. 3PO and R2 are much boxier and more robotic looking, Vader's features are less sleek, and Luke looks a lot more like He-Man than anything.
Fabulous secret powers were revealed to me the day I held aloft my magic sword and said,
"It just isn't fair."
Even if it doesn't perfectly depict the films, it isn't that bad, giving these early issues their own unique feel. And there's some nice coloring touches, such as putting all of C-3PO's dialogue in yellow boxes rather than white bubbles. I should also mention the cover. There are a lot of strange errors here, such as Vader's green mask, Luke and Obi-Wan's red lightsabers, and Han's pinkish-purple blaster. It has classic, catchy comic book subtitles such as Fabulous First Issue and Enter Luke Skywalker. Will he save the galaxy or destroy it? Overall, this is a great cover. It's flashy, exciting, and perfectly captures Star Wars. It's a fun comic, but it has its quirks and mistakes. When Luke is talking about Tosche Station, they spelled Tosche incorrectly. And at one point in the story, 3PO says, "These asteroid droids are getting too much for me." Astromech or Astrodroid, but never Asteroid Droid. Not to mention that asteroid is actually spelled incorrectly here, unless referring to a mathematical hypocycloid with 4 cusps. And there's some other pretty hilarious additions as well, such as Luke yelling, "Yow!", Leia narrating her actions, and Darth Vader floating a coffee cup over to himself. I'm not sure how they thought he would drink that, but it's pretty funny to think about Vader sipping on his macchiato while strangling Admiral Motti. I also want to mention how fleshed out this story is. They don't miss much from the movie at all, with the exception of slightly trimming scenes or putting their own spin onto comedic situations. I also love how much text they put onto each page. I'm a huge fan of the modern Marvel comics, but they don't have much to say. They're brilliantly written with some incredible stories, but their pages don't have nearly as much text, making them extremely quick reads. Here we have a full conversation in great detail. It's just a small observation, but I've come to realize that I like the more fleshed out older comics. So let's wrap up this issue with the best quote, best panel, and my rating. The best quote has to be, "I thought you'd be here. Certainly didn't expect you to be out working." It was between this and Leia's "I've set mine to kill," just for how out of place it feels. But this Biggs quote perfectly sums up Luke's character, showing that he's out of place from his friends and more self-reliant than his laid-back peers. The best panel comes from page 17, where Luke is running to inspect the nearby Tusken Raiders. It has 3PO and R2 present and gives us a nice look at our protagonist. At the back of this issue, there's a special dedication article, where this image is shown in better detail. Not the most beautiful image of Luke, but it depicts his character well. Overall, I love this comic book. I'm super lucky to own a couple copies of my own, reimagining my second favorite film of all time. Marvel's Star Wars issue number 1 earns 8 out of 10 floating coffee cups. It's not perfect, but it's just iconic enough. Next up, issue number 2, 6 Against the Galaxy. Looking at the cover, you know this will be a great issue. Tons of unique aliens, action happening everywhere you look, and the tagline, "Luke Skywalker strikes back." We also have Luke saying, "Swing that lightsaber, Ben, or we're finished." Even with lightsaber spelled incorrectly, it's a clever way to draw people in. The story picks up with Obi-Wan rescuing Luke from the Sand People, introducing us to the ways of the Force. Luke decides to help old Ben on his mission to Alderaan, running into a spice smuggler and his Wookiee co-pilot. After catching a ride with them, they run into a bit of Imperial trouble, leaving us off on a cliffhanger saying, "Out of hyperspace and into the Death Star." This is really a great chapter in this story. We truly get our first taste of the mystical, cultural, and adventurous sides of Star Wars. Meeting Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the most important parts of the entire film, and seeing it depicted so well in comic book form is great. Mos Eisley is an incredible setting that was depicted just as it should be, and Han, Chewie, and the Falcon steal every panel they're in. The artwork in this issue is a huge improvement on the last one. While before no one quite looked like themselves, here the images pop off the page as if they came straight from the movie. Luke Skywalker is depicted surprisingly well, and Obi-Wan looks stoic no matter how he's shown. Everything is clear and easy to follow, none of the jumbled up confusion that the previous issue would sometimes present. Even with all of the praise I'm giving it, it has some pretty glaring errors. Leia calls her father Bail Antilles, Viceroy of Alderaan. You'd think she'd know her own dad's name, but apparently not. The correct title is Senator Bail Organa. The interrogator droid looks nothing like the one that appears in the film. The slender green bug-eyed droid bears no resemblance to the small black floating medical sphere that we know. Instead of being attacked by Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan, the bar creatures look much more like a Duros and a Chadrafan. And the most glaring difference between the film and the comic is the appearance of Jabba the Hutt. Originally cut from the 1977 version of Star Wars, and later put back in 1997 for the special editions, Jabba the Hutt meets with Han Solo. When they were making the comics, there were no photos of what Jabba looked like, so they just picked a random background character to fill in for his species. That lucky character was Mosep Benid. So now we have a yellow-skinned, white-whiskered humanoid creature with green gloves and an orange coat as this universe's Hutt crime lord. That's the gist of the issue, so let's rate it. The best quote is one that everyone knows. It's the ship that made the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. This is one of the most iconic Han Solo quotes from the entire saga, so it's great to see it adapted in this comic book. For some reason, they split up the word parsec with a hyphen, but it doesn't change the quote. For best panel, it's a bit of a toss-up. At the end of the issue, we get two really incredible panels. One of the whole gang on the Millennium Falcon about to make the jump to hyperspace, and the other showing the Millennium Falcon surrounded by a very stylized hyperspace effect. These are both great panels for different reasons, but the one that I'm gonna have to go with is Greedo getting shot. This should really prove once and for all that Han was the only one who ever shot. The reason I chose this panel is just how cool it makes Han Solo look. Greedo looks perfect as he gets shot in the chest, nice colors, good artwork, and the perfect setup. Overall, this is the best comic book out of the three I'm reviewing today. It has everything you could ever ask from Star Wars, earning issue number 2, 6 Against the Galaxy, 9 out of 10 Jabbas. Finally for today, issue number 3, Death Star. The cover for this book is very busy, with our 4 main characters charging towards an Imperial trooper, guns firing. For the most part, there's not much wrong with this image, except for the fact that the Death Star is green and Han and Luke aren't wearing their stormtrooper armor. The story starts with the Empire destroying Leia's home of Alderaan, while Luke Skywalker is training on the Falcon. When the ship exits hyperspace, they come upon the Death Star. They infiltrate the station and set out to save the princess, ending with Han, Chewie, Luke, and Leia fighting their way to freedom. That's just before the trash compactor scene. This is the worst issue of the trio that I'm talking about today. The artwork here is about on par with the previous comics, but the story goes by much slower. The pacing seems a bit off and sometimes made it feel like a chore to read. The iconic moments of Luke successfully using the Force, approaching the Death Star, and rescuing Leia just don't play off here as well as they did in the film. In all fairness, it does have fewer mistakes. Han's hair is strangely black throughout most of the issue, and an Imperial officer refers to a stormtrooper as TX-421 rather than the iconic TK-421. And for some reason, Obi-Wan calls Luke lad a lot, which seems like a strange character trait to randomly throw in, but it's not a big issue. The best quote has to be 3PO's famous remark to R2-D2, "I suggest a new strategy, R2. Let the Wookiee win." There are a bunch of really cool panels that show up here and there throughout the issue, but the best one has to be the opening page. Aboard the Death Star, we view Alderaan, as stormtroopers, officers, Grand Moff Tarkin, Princess Leia, and the ominous Darth Vader look onward. It's a great piece of artwork. Overall, issue number 3, Death Star, earned 7 out of 10 Alderaan chunks. I may be a bit harsh on it, but it's still a great comic. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please tell me in the comments. If I receive some positive feedback, I'll make sure to continue the series until we hit issue number 107. Subscribe to Star Geek for weekly Star Wars content. If you enjoyed the video, please shoot that like button at light speed. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by clicking the links in the description, and you can check out my last video, the top 10 episode 1 scenes, if you just click on the thumbnail. You can also watch my Factor Beam on Jabba the Hutt. Until we meet again in a galaxy far, far away, this has been Star Geek. So this post-credits bit really has nothing to do with Marvel, but is still somewhat connected to Star Wars. I don't think I can make a whole video discussing this topic, so I quickly want to mention it here. Stranger Things. This is by far my favorite TV show I've ever seen. The setting is cool, the mystery is interesting, and the characters are perfect. Every aspect of this 80s style Netflix series is exciting. And one of the most exciting parts are all of the references it makes to 80s movies. E.T., The Thing, Poltergeist, Alien, The Goonies, and even Star Wars. In the show, we see a Kenner Yoda action figure, the Millennium Falcon, and Dustin compares possible traitors to Lando Calrissian.
Lando Calrissian.
Would you shut up about Lando?
Of course, seeing that pristine vintage Millennium Falcon get dropped so many times was pretty painful to watch. The incredible Drew Struzan poster alone should be enough to convince you of the similarities. If you haven't seen the show, I definitely suggest checking it out. You won't regret it.